Hi, welcome to the Pipe Up podcast. I'm Jacey Norman. I'm joined by my co-host, Jamie Jones-Buchanan, and this week's very special guest, Paul Cheetham, who I'll introduce you to in just a few moments. Now, do you dread the thought of speaking in public? Does it fill you with horror? Would you do anything to avoid it? If the answer to that question is yes, then you're in the right place, because this podcast is all about improving our communication through the power of speech and storytelling, learning from the best in business and in sport. Paul is the founder of Sedulo. He is the co-founder of Be The Standard, which is a group that Jamie and I are a very big part of as well. And he has just recently launched the Sedulo Foundation. Paul, I've seen you speak at a lot of events and you never look nervous.
I'm cringing already that you've said that. I don't know whether it's funny when you say you never look nervous. I always think that I do. And that's the problem, isn't it, when you speak, is you're always actually looking, but you never know what the other people are thinking. But in my head, I can tell you now, first of all, at least I'm brave enough and I accept that I'm brave enough to do it. Right, I understand that. But there is no point where I'm speaking in front of an audience of any size and not thinking, this is not going down well, is it? Do you know what I mean? And in my head, I'm making up scenarios. And then what do? You either back out, or as you would say, you just remain uncomfortable, or you try and get comfortable whilst you're remaining uncomfortable. But I hate public speaking of any sort. And I'll tell you some stories as we're talking about how bad it actually was, my starting position. And I'm constantly, it's whirring through my mind constantly as I'm speaking, what other people are thinking of me going in. And I feel like everybody can see it on my face as well, by the way. So thanks for that.
So have you got any tactics then to help you overcome that? How do you approach it? You know, do you try and avoid it, or have you had to just develop a really good poker face?
The end, because I'll tell you what actually happened with me, right? and I can remember it as clear as day. First of all, people think, and I don't know why, but people think I should be comfortable with speaking in public, and I definitely wasn't. And I'd been a best man before for another mate, but one of my business partners about 6 years ago, said to me, will you be best man at my wedding? And I'd already been a best man, right? Which is nervous for any bloke. It's one of the, having to make people laugh adds something else to the speech, right? But I don't know what it was, because I'd already been one, and he'd asked me to be one for him. So it was my second best man speech. And then, as you know, we have quite funky offices at Sedulo. He said, do you mind if I hold the reception in the office? So I thought, well, that should make my job easier, because that really is my arena, right? My comfort space is being in the office, in my office. And it got to the day, and there's half an hour to go before I'm about to speak, and I'm thinking, I'm irrationally nervous here. This is not rational, so I'll try and be rational. It doesn't always work, that, does it? Right? So you take some deep breaths. Doesn't always work, does it? So I thought, I'll just go upstairs. For those, we're on 3 floors, and our bottom floor is almost like a hotel lobby bar in it, just to give people an example of the environment. It's about 4,000 square foot of just a bar, and that's where he was holding it. Above that is where all my staff work. So I thought, I'll just go up there and just compose myself, take some deep breaths. And I get upstairs, I'm on my own now on the floor, take some deep breaths, it's not working. Nip to the toilet, it's not working. And then I start to think, right, 15 minutes, now my missus is texting, where are you? You've got to be on in 5-10 minutes. And it's getting worse and worse and worse. So I'm there, and I think, you're going to have to go down, you're just going to have to go down and do it. And I start walking down the stairs, and I start to feel sick and a little bit dizzy. And I'm thinking, well, at least if I pass out, right, I'll have to go to hospital. And they can't possibly blame me for getting out of it if you pass out. So I'm half thinking, I don't mind if I pass out at this stage, because it gets me out of it. And that's kind of the level that I got to in my own mind of I don't even know what the word is, but almost just closing up. And I was close to passing out. And I was really 50-50 of saying, do you know what? I just don't feel well enough to do it. And then there's just a part inside me that thinks, fuck it, you're going to have to just do it. And that happens often, by the way, not just in public appearances, but I did it. And I started. I'll tell you another story later, more recent than this. But I got on the mic, and within about 20 seconds, a bit like doing karaoke, innit, for those people that hate karaoke, and then you do it, and then all of a sudden you keep putting your name forward. It was like that. It started to feel more comfortable. And then all of a sudden I was then acting, and I was starting to be quite natural. Right. But I remember getting off it, and everyone went, "That's brilliant." Right. And it was pretty good. Even I know it was pretty good, right? Because I've seen lots of best man speeches. It was pretty good. But the starting point from what I thought it was going to be to knowing it was a really good, natural, funny best man speech. But so there was a part of it where I'm reading it out and I go, "So my name is Paul." Like at that pace, like I don't fucking know my name's Paul, right? And I'm the best man on behalf of Lee Jones. You know what I mean? It's that level.
You almost couldn't remember his name.
Exactly. And then I'm having to go. The first story is about when we went to Copenhagen, and I'm thinking, come on, Paul. You know your name's Paul. You know he's Lee. Yeah. And you know you went to Copenhagen. Why are you having to read that? So anyway, that was my first. So I remember finishing it and I thought, I am never, ever, I made a promise to myself, I was never going to feel like that again. I was embarrassed internally, disappointed with myself internally for being so irrational that I decided I was going to throw myself into doing more public speaking and getting more comfortable being uncomfortable.
Love that. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think that's the only way to deal with it, because by nature it is uncomfortable. But you're saying there, Paul, that there's some physiological responses there where you're feeling sick, people sweat, they're increasing temperature. But ultimately you've got to have, and I was leaning on the word courage to take that step, because actually when it does go well and you feel confident from your preparation, it can be an amazing experience as well to convey a message. So anybody out there that's listening and maybe getting comfort from hearing that people like yourself get uncomfortable, how important is having courage and just leaping into it to public speaking?
Do you know one of the other things, just what you were saying there, it reminded me of some other things we've interviewed sports people. One of the things I love boxing. Yeah. And I always think, if I was a boxer, I'd pass out on the way to the ring. How do you cope with those nerves? How do you, or I used to think, maybe they just get in the ring and they're not scared or nervous, or they need courage. Well, and I think as a society, what we've got to be careful of is the things you just described then, feeling sick, increasing temperature, heart rate fluttering. We've started to associate those physiological things in being negative.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And so before you go on stage, you think, my heart's beating. Oh no, my mouth's gone dry, or my stomach's flipping. And you start to think that they're all things that are wrong, when actually it's preparation for performance. So I think there's a stage before being courageous, and it's actually understanding that all those feelings need to be embraced. And so when I've spoke to particularly boxers, I've always asked it for, because I've always felt the pressure you must be under when that curtain goes back and you walk out. How do you even do it? And it all comes down to every single one of them. They kind of, if they don't have them feelings before they go into perform, they feel less confident. So I think that's the first part. The second part of your question was throwing yourself into it. Everybody in the end, the more uncomfortable you are, probably more is at stake. So that's where the success is going to be, the other side of discomfort. The more often you throw yourself into that arena, or prepare or practice, or just get used to handling them feelings, the better you're going to get. Bit like me sat here today. My nerves out of 10 doing this podcast are 0 or a 1. Right? I know yous. I've been on this side of podcasts before, quite enjoy doing them. When I very first did podcast, it was an 11. Do you know what I mean? So you've got to throw yourself into all the situations. You've got a choice. You either get uncomfortable, turn your back on it and walk away.
Yep.
Don't grow, don't develop, don't get stronger. Or you just keep doing it. And we've all got examples. Every listener here has got an example of something they was once fearful of that they no longer are.
So you can turn around and almost be safe. And I heard somebody say recently that to them, not to everybody, by the way, it's none of my business what you think of the word safe, but they used an acronym that SAFE stands for staying average forever. In that, if you're going to stay safe and not get out of your comfort zone, you're not going to grow. So are those feelings of anxiety that actually disappear when you increase the muscle memory with practice over time? Are they signals to instruct you that you're actually in a place of growth or an opportunity of growth?
And then you start over a period to search for them rather than run away from them.
Yeah.
So often, I will now get bored if I'm not feeling those things.
The adrenaline kick, do you mean? Because often adrenaline fuels performance, but it's about rewiring your brain that something exciting is going to happen rather than something awful is going to happen. And unfortunately, those same feelings we associate with both of those things.
100%. So I find myself sometimes contemplating, I've not had them feelings for a while. So what? Am I living? Am I evolving? Am I progressing? Why haven't I had them feelings? Why am I staying in an environment of safety? Because nothing we all know of any positive consequence really happens in an environment of safety. So then you start to challenge yourself.
So when you started Sedulo, did you realise how important being a great communicator would be to the success of that business?
No. I didn't understand anything, right? I was just winging it as we go along, still am. To a great deal. Still am, and every business owner I speak to, we all have the same things of we're just winging it. We don't really know what we're doing, But so I didn't even think that far in advance. When it kind of kicked in from running a business. So I'll tell you what happened. What you tend to do when you're getting something off the ground, maybe like a business, you surround yourself with similar people. Quite easy to communicate with similar people. So when I was 28, my employees at the time were all lads who were in the 20s. There was no diversity of anything, sex, gender, age. Everybody was just the same. Well, it's quite easy to speak to those people and communicate. You don't have to think that hard. It's when we started to get a bit bigger. Maybe we got to 10 or 15 staff and I thought, there's too many similar people in this organisation. We're not going to be successful without diversity. I now need to bring in other people, and it might be age, more old and experience, and you have to speak to them far differently than the way I could speak to a 21-year-old lad who's studying his accountancy qualification. Then I started to understand building an organisation requires people with different experience, if you like, and everybody then needs speaking to differently. So you have to think about your communication rather than it being just so much from the hip.
There's a why behind all this, because you've got a reason to exist, a purpose that I imagine, I could be wrong, is somewhat rooted into your origin story. I always talk about this, the superhero's journey. The archetypal superhero always has an origin story. And I wanted to ask you, Paul, what is it about your origin that you want to communicate to the world, to your business, to make the world a better place, that actually drives you, or it's a big enough motivator for you to want to make that leap of faith and get comfortable with being uncomfortable?
I think when I reflect now, and it's only reflecting I understand this, I've got a chip on my shoulder about my upbringing. And that chip on my shoulder, really, as I've become, I don't know if the word is successful, I still have that imposter syndrome that holds me back from saying that. But let's say partial success, I feel more comfortable with saying that. I have a bit of a chip on my shoulder with the way my life started. And when I look round at even the size of the village or the town that I come from, you're not really supported to be the best version of you. And I think there was lots of opportunities in my past where the education system or even people around me, my family, would, and then you've got mates who will all almost give it, who does he think he is? Who does she think she is? Whenever you want to try and be the best version of you. So I think there's all these kind of things that leave me grumpy about as a kid, do you have equal opportunities? Right, and of course that comes into many different diversities and so on. So when I look back, I always used to look at things like my dad, who was a lorry driver. He would always have a limiting factor to what car we could buy or what holidays we could go on, or, you know, who we knocked about with, you know, that kind of stuff. And I think the education system's not built for you to be the best version of you. You know, my school, it was like, oh, you're going to get some good GCSEs. You need to get a job for life. It's all kind of built to hold you back, and I have a real issue with it, a chip on my shoulder about it. So I think the thing for me is I feel lucky. I don't know what was built in me, but I always knew I wasn't going to be like everybody else. Right. That's not better, but it is different. I'm not like anybody else who come through my school. I'm completely different. I have a completely different mindset. And now when I look back, things like the foundation, I want to try and air that to show other kids. Don't let your grandma tell you to be a butcher. Don't let even your parents have a limiting factor to what your true ambition could be or your potential could achieve. And more, even worse than that, friends, so-called, education systems, schools, colour, where you're brought up, all those kind of things can really hold you back.
So when you go back into those environments now, do you change the way that you communicate as a result of that? You know, are you the Paul that we know, or do you kind of retreat back into what they expect you to be? Because it's still that thing that people wear different masks in different arenas, don't they?
I can be a chameleon. I think it's important when you communicate to be a chameleon. But at the centre of it all, it's still me. You know, at the centre of it all, I still go back to that working class council estate kid. And there's nothing I like doing better, actually, than speaking to other working class council estate kids and seeing, can I narrate to them in a way that will touch a nerve, that will create change? And that really is my life's goal. You know, my mission now is to communicate with those kids, but it's not just kids, by the way, but to make sure that we start equalising opportunities. And more so, just making sure people reach their potential. And I can do that probably best where I came from. So I'm more comfortable in that environment still.
I think that's a great point and question that you raised there, Jesse, because it's not disingenuous or unauthentic. What, if I understand it right, Paul's doing is speaking a language that different people understand. And by language, I don't mean English and Spanish. I mean the way that people talk on council estates, the way that people talk in a boardroom. You've got to understand what language to speak and how to tone a conversation based on the information that you want to deliver. So maybe if you can delve into that, when you're talking to professional sports people who might be working class people who've done really well, got loads of money, and then you might be speaking to upper class people who live in either a corporate world or a political world, versus somebody in a boardroom who's like yourself on a similar mission, but not forgot where they come from. How do you manage flicking between those environments?
So I think, first of all, you've got to identify what your own DNA is.
Yeah.
So I don't deviate from that. Right, I might swear less in front of somebody who's brought up a bit better than somebody who I think actually swearing's going to really touch. And you know, you swear to 16-year-olds, they quite like it. They quite like it. Yeah. And actually, it's
top communication skill there.
I was doing a talk at a college not long ago, and I swore, and I thought I should have thrown this one in. I thought I'm just doing it anyway. And then all of a sudden, their ears pricked up because they thought he's one of us. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They can. So I think the first part is there's the 90% of everything that you're going to narrate has got to be completely and utterly almost your DNA. You don't deviate from that. How you convey it is you've got to be able to understand the audience you're speaking to. And then you can flex it, right? And the only way you're going to learn to do that is by being amongst different people again. So you've got to, at some point, be a sports person in a boardroom. Now, I deal with a lot of sports people. They don't like boardrooms. You know, I see some people who are mightily famous, and in a boardroom, you can't get a word out of them because it's not their comfort zone. Yeah. And yet they'll play in front of 60, 80,000 people, no problem whatsoever. They get on stage in front of certain people. I've met stage performers who, when you actually speak to them in an interview, in a professional environment, they almost metaphorically go to pieces. So I think the only way you start to learn cues, social cues, is by getting out there and having that diversity of what you're doing. So when I said I will never go back to feeling that way in a best man speech again, well, I just can't be a best man another 10 times, can I? The first thing I did was I reached out to my school, and I thought, okay, I'm going to reach out to my school to start to build my confidence. And then after my school, it was, okay, now I'm going to reach out to some podcasts, or I'm going to even take advantage of, we host events, as you know, at our place. I'd always slope off from them because they'd go, oh, Paul, do you want to say a few words? I think, I'm just going to snow. And I'd literally sneak off. So I just threw myself into more environments, mixed environments, diverse environments. So I think 90% of what or even 100% of what you're going to say has got to be what you'd always say to anybody at any time. Yep. And then you have that flex because you throw yourself out there in front of different audiences and start to learn a bit more experience, social cues.
And we talk about public speaking as if it's just in front of people face to face, but for you, you've got quite a big profile on social media and LinkedIn. How do you talk to those invisible audiences that don't know you, and how do you build that rapport and trust with them, and do you try to do that?
So again, my rule is I don't post anything that's not true, because then if I get it wrong, if the truth is wrong, I can live with that. What I can't live with is saying a few lies or a few embellishments and that coming back to bite me. So I think the thing is I've got to be careful what I say. I can't just say anything. Now, we have big clients. It's like we have the general election coming up. I've got my thoughts on the way this country's been run for the last 14 years. How much do I convey them? I'll convey them a bit, truthfully. And then I have to take a step back from some things, right? Because I know that it can be, what's the word?
Well, it's too political for you, I guess, in one way. It can actually be a problem.
100%.
People know.
And yet I do want people to understand the truth. So then there's a challenge there, isn't there? So I think the thing is, when I'm on social, I say it as it is. But nowadays, I curtail what I'm about to say and sometimes don't bother, truthfully. Much more than I would have done it before. I had no business profile, if you like. But I do still think it's important people learn from you. So you have that obligation to say something, but the challenge is not to say something that might get you in trouble.
So how much is too much? Because one of the things we talk about in Pipe Up is about storytelling and sharing stories to be great communicators. Sometimes there are leaders that share too much and there are others that don't share enough. So for you, what is the right balance?
It's a challenge and it's a balance. People buy into people. So if I just looked at my LinkedIn, in fact, all my socials are really different. Like there'll be a picture of me on Instagram with my top off. I wouldn't put that on LinkedIn, right, and tell people to eat the rainbow every day, right? But I would do on Insta. And on Twitter, actually, I'm quite political because there's a lot more political content that I probably won't put on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So they are all quite different. But I do want people to be able to see the real me, because people buy off people. And I don't want everybody to see an embellished version of me, which is just me constantly marketing myself as this huge success story, because that's not the truth. The truth is, it's as difficult for me today in the daily fight that is business and the daily war of business, and things go right and things go wrong, as it was 10 years ago. So I don't want people to look at me and think, oh, it's linear, this route to success. It's a straight line. Well, it's not. And I want people who are in the dips to be able to feel, it's all right that I'm in a dip, because he's in a dip. I didn't realise people like Paul are in dips. I thought 15 years in, and with 200 odd staff and 20 odd million turnover, I think at this point your life is rosy. Well, it's not rosy, and I don't want to portray that it is. It comes back to, again, authenticity, which I'm actually going to push to one side as a word, because everybody's using it. It's truth and it's honesty. So I try and bring as much truth and honesty as I possibly can without thinking, because I have to think, is it really detrimental? Now, if it's a bit detrimental, but it's the truth, I'm not that bothered. I'm not that bothered, because I feel like it's better to be truthful and not protecting our brand or even my brand. But now I've got to protect Sedulo's brand, 200 odd jobs. So it's always going to be a challenge, that, Jacey. But I still lean more to telling the truth that could get me in a bit of trouble, but it's a truth, than moving away and not letting other people hear what it's like to have a panic attack, or what it's like to be in business and struggling to pay wages, or what it's like when you've got imposter syndrome about to get on stage. You know, you've got to showcase people what you overcome in order to give them the confidence to try things. So it's always going to be a challenge. And I think the bigger you get, the bigger the challenge it gets.
There's a varied diet of information you just give us there, Paul. I'm going to jump on the one that stood out to me the most. I just like it. We're talking about language here. Just, can you define what you mean by the truth? I grew up in sport. I grew up in a successful sporting culture. So truth to me was very objective. But in this world, it's very subjective. People talk about my truth. And I'm not particularly keen on that language either. But in the context of your life and the message you're trying to portray, what's the definition of truth to you?
I think you always get dead deep, don't you? You know, I've catch me out with some questions. You know what? Because it's a question I've never answered before, but I'm going to answer it straight from the cuff. Do you know what I think the truth is? Something you're willing to stand behind.
Right, okay.
That's my best definition that I could come as you was asking the question then. Yeah. Truth to me is something I can say, and if it gets called into question, I can stand behind it. That's my definition of truth. So... And it's got to come from there. We spoke just before off, and I said the best speakers I like listening to are the ones that talk pretty fast, because they haven't got time to lie, right? Yeah. So if things come from the cuff, we talked about Barry Earn just off before. I interviewed him last week, and he's been down at Be The Standard, and you know him really well. You just know when he's speaking. He couldn't make that up. He's too quick. He leaves his mouth too quick.
He's got a lifetime of stories.
So I think truth is, whatever you say that could be questioned by somebody, you're willing to stand behind it. There's I was going to say the truth behind it, but there's an honesty behind it.
Or an integrity almost,
isn't there? Integrity. That for me is the truth.
And it's you ultimately, because reaching into Sedulo, the name, and it comes from an amalgamation of Latin words, which ultimately, from a law point of view, stands for marked by care and persistent effort. Now, I can tell just by listening to you, I know your effort is never questioned when it comes to Paul Cheetham Karcz. Your hammer and tongue at everything you do, veins popping out, and you've got to manage your lifestyle to make sure you don't fall over. But there's an element of care, and you spoke about that care in the way that you portray some words, whether it be in a classroom to a lot of working class kids, or the different platforms of social media on which you're posting different content, because it's contextual. So just, if you don't mind, for everybody out there who might be listening, just sum up where Sedulo came from, because it's obviously a manifestation of you in some degree, and the fact that you've got so many employees that do what, Paul, for the purpose of what?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what is interesting. I did come up with that name, and then I hated it for years, because people call it Sedulo. You know, they come up with all these things. I thought, why have I come up with a brand that nobody gets right? Sedulo, Saludo, you know, you're like... But it's weird, you know, sometimes you talked about manifestation there. It's weird sometimes how things come together. If somebody said to me now, what do you think your two best talents are that define you? I put as much effort in as anybody else that I know. And I care about as much as anybody else that I know. At the time, it didn't feel like that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's with reflection. Or is it with reflection? I don't know. I certainly came up with a word that means the two things that describe me the most, but at the age of 28, did I know I cared as much as anybody else? Did I know I had as much work ethic and effort as anybody else? I'm not certain I did. It's almost like one of them's when you've got the good fortune at 40-odd years of age to look back. You think, I nailed that, but I don't know how I nailed it. Do you get what I mean?
Yep.
Now I really love the fact that our name is our name, because I think those two things also come for free, right? So coming all the way back to, doesn't matter where you brought up, Jamie. Doesn't matter where you brought up, Jacey. you can fucking care for people and you can work hard and put effort in. And it doesn't matter. It's actually a barrier it breaks down all barriers, right? So it's even better that it doesn't just define me, weirdly, after 16 or 17 years of founding the brand, but actually coming right the way back to my purpose. There are two things I could sit with anyone. It doesn't matter how down and out, how skint, how destitute, how you're being treated, mistreated by society. You can care about others.
Yeah.
Cost you nothing. And you can put maximum effort in. Cost you nothing. So that's where the brand came from. And I don't know if it's a fluke or it was meant to be. I have no idea. But one thing I'm trying to do is create that as the cornerstone of the culture. We look after clients, care. Put as much effort in, work as hard as you physically possibly can. And then we want clients who care, which is why I create a community. Because we're just a facilitator, Sedulo Foundation. We're just the people that put people together. We're the facilitator for clients that care and clients that are willing to put effort in and come in at Christmas and wrap presents till 2 a.m. So I don't know if it's good fortune, if I'm honest with you, or I'm looking back thinking there was some manifestation going on.
I'm listening to you there and I'm wondering now whether there were values that you put together in a brand early on. And you're reflecting back now and going, how did I know I was going to be hardest working in terms of effort and have the most care back at that age? But given that you put that out there as this is my brand and you knew what that was, is there some argument that every day when you looked at Sedulo, it meant that you've got to care and you've got to put some effort in to live up to what you were saying your identity is? Therefore, over time, you just become great at it.
Well, we used a third-party agency that came up with various names as well, on the back of this, right? So, but the one thing that I loved more than anything is that stamp, marked by care and persistent effort, goes on everything we send out. Right. So it's almost like to my team, and from a cultural perspective, don't dare stamp it marked by care and effort if you're not fucking caring and put effort in. Yeah. Do you know? So that was actually the practical reason why that was the name out of all the others that I went for. It was almost, that could be the cornerstone of every single transaction, everything you do, every piece of communication you do, make sure it's marked by care and persistent effort, at least.
And as that business has grown, how do you continue to communicate that culture and those values to all of those people that now work for you? I mean, I know you recently had your conference. Did that require a lot of prep for you? Do you have to really concentrate on what you want to get across to them at those things? Or do you just know because it comes from the heart?
Well, we have a mission, and our mission is to help create positive change in the communities we exist in. To help create positive change in the communities we exist in. That's why we exist. We don't exist to make money. We'll make money. We don't exist to be the best consultancy firm in the world. But if we're the best consultancy firm in the world, we can make more positive change to more communities that we exist in. So the mission is that. The one thing that's important about the communication of that mission is this. I started the business and my house is on the line, so I'm going to earn more than most people in that organisation. So we're all different to that purpose if it's money orientated. Bit like if you're in the pit lane. Lewis Hamilton gets paid the most money, but the guy who puts the wheel on and off at the back's equally important. So how do you get buy-in? Actually, creating positive change in the communities we exist in, it doesn't matter what position you have in my organisation, we can all share that in equal measure. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's why the mission is that. And it's not to be the best accountancy firm in the country, forget that. But if we are the best advisory firm in the world one day, we'll be able to do far more of our mission. And then beneath that, we have values, right? So we have 3 values that every time you log into your laptop, it says, have fun together, give back together, get results together. So they're like 3 pillars that are communicated every time you log on. And when you walk around every office, it's constant. When you get appraised, it's how much fun you've had. How much fun have you contributed to the team? What performances did you get? And how much did you give back to the communities? And that's what your pay rise will be based on. So we feed into that. And then the last part is we have 10 behaviours. And the team chose them behaviours. And they're things like be interested and interesting. because not many tax advisors are interested or interesting. Or it's be the first person on the dance floor. That's another one of our behaviours. To kind of bring to life the showcasing, to communicate how we're trying to be different than what everybody else is doing. So the whole team did that. And again, when you log on, you have to go through that screen every time you log onto your laptop. Before you work, you have to go through those series of mission, values and behaviours. So they're a constant.
That's amazing. Where did you learn that? Because that's almost subliminal messaging, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you're going, if over time this will just become ingrained in your memory. Most people, Paul, that I've met anyway in business, wouldn't go to that level of detail to impress upon their employees, especially in a sort of an accountancy firm, which is black and white, ones and zeros, numbers. Where did you learn that? That's important.
I tell you what instigated it was me reading the book about the All Blacks.
Right.
And the name of it's just gone from my mind now. She's going to annoy me. Come on, you must know.
We were talking
this.
about it earlier. I'll remember it.
Oh my God. Oh my God. So that breeding of heritage, what it means to be in an organisation, what it means to be, all those things. Oh my word. I won't be able to stop thinking now about what the name of the book is. Great book, by the way. And you don't need to be a rugby fan to see how they've evolved and how they've become successful against the odds in many ways. So that was the thing that instigated a lot of these subtle communication things. And there's even things like heritage. So for example, my business is 13, 14 years old. I take them on holiday every year, as you know. We have videographers that take footage of it. So it's a memory forever. And what will happen is, and then we have a Sedulo Times, and we have an annual yearbook, which every member of staff gets. And we create, or we can't have a number 7 shirt, as you've got here, that will be remembered forever, you know, or at Man United, they've got a legacy of their number 7 shirt. So how do you create things like that, which bond a team? And I used the All Blacks book. This just came to me and then went. Legacy. What a great book. One of my favourites. I used that again and started to bring in some of the details. So we brought out our newspaper, which go back. And you know, the thing is, we'll have a Christmas do. It's in Tenerife this year. There'll be 200 odd of us. And somebody will go, oh, it's not as hot as what it was in Portugal in 3 years ago. And then somebody will go, yeah, but that wasn't as hot as what it was like in Milan 9 years ago. And then someone will go, and you start to hear, and then they'll share the stories. And with stories becomes a culture, storytelling. Now, if I'm the only person in the organisation that tells a story, that's not that effective. What you need, why I take people away, is you want 200 people storytelling, right? Because what somebody says who's been there 11, 12 years, what does that tell everybody else in the organisation? It tells them this is a place that you stay. Come from the book, legacy. So that was what kind of sown the idea to bring this detail through to create culture.
From your perspective, I just wonder, in some of the work we do at Be The Standard, we have access to some of the most incredible speakers in business and sport. Who, for you, have been the most inspirational speakers? And do you take things from them as well?
I was thinking of this before, because I don't have a hero. I don't have you two have. I don't have a hero, but I have plenty of heroes. They're just people who are better than me at something. As I've got older, I've started to realise I'm a benefit to others as well. I don't think I realised that early on, but I've started to realise if I'm in a room, you can give me something, but I can trade with you. I've got stuff to give. If Kevin Sinfield's in a room, I don't feel inferior to Kev. I know he's got a lot to give me, but I think I've got a decent amount to give him back. You know, not that you're constantly trading. It's a subliminal trade, isn't it? So when you come to the speakers we have, I learned from all of them because all of them are better than me at summit. The best ones that we've had, they're really hard to say. My favourite speaker we had was Sugar Ray Leonard, but that was nothing to do with what Sugar Ray said. That was purely because my 79-year-old dad is watching me into a lorry driver who used to think Las Vegas was the other side of Mars and you couldn't possibly get there. has got Sugar Ray Leonard now, his boyhood hero, sat being interviewed by me. So that nothing will surpass that for me. Nothing will surpass that, because it's just a memory. And having Sugar Ray Leonard in my office interviewing him I'll remember forever. And my dad's face more than anything. So he was my favourite. The ones that I learn off, there's just so many of them. Gary Neville and how relentless he is. And often, sometimes it's not what you learn off people, it reinforces what you're good at.
Yeah.
So Eddie Hearn stood there and said, nobody works as hard as me. And I thought, I do. Right? I thought, I do. Not that I was detracting from him, but it made me recognise my skill set too.
Yeah.
And I think I can say that at 45. I recognise some of my skill sets, you know. I also recognise my weaknesses. So I have lots of heroes or lots of people that I learn lots from.
Do you think they sometimes are the best, most effective communicators? Because sometimes people have got incredible stories to tell, but if they can't articulate them, nobody ever understands what they are.
It's yeah. I mean, you're so right. It's like, again, I'm going to think of another example. Graham Souness, who we had in not so long ago. He was so authentic. So if you was asking me, what was it you liked about him? He was authentic. You could tell he was telling the truth at the pace that he was doing at. I think somebody asked him a question. Somebody might have asked him a question how he wanted to be remembered. And he said he didn't give a toss. How other people he don't know remember him. Not interested. And you knew by these facial expressions, which are important in communication, by the way, you could tell by his face he genuinely don't. He's a happier man because he doesn't give a toss. I asked Barry Hearn the same the other week, and he just almost laughed at the question, right? Like, what do you mean? What do I care about what people think of me? I don't give a toss what people think of me, other than my small family in the main. So I feel like the people who are the good speakers are the ones that are so authentic that they connect with you. They're narrating rather than reading. So it's very much a narration of something they've done. I'm not very good at looking at practical stuff. You know, if somebody says to me, here's how you build, here's how you sell better, I'd rather start with how do you build confidence. If you build confidence, you'll be able to sell better. Go on.
No, that's a really important thing. I was thinking about this myself. The information that we try to give kids in school, for me, will be less about that information, which is free in this day and age anyway on the internet. It's more about having the skills to develop to be able to do just that. Recently, I was impressed by a Pablo Picasso quote that said, the meaning of life is to find a gift. The purpose of life is to give that away. You've made reference to a few people that have grown up in sporting world, played with Rob Burrow, sadly passed away after a 4.5-year fight with MND recently. And then that partnership with Kevin Sinfield, who was the greatest cultural architect and leader I've ever met. Both of those individuals had different gifts. They use them and manifest them first and foremost on a rugby league field in the first chapter of their life. Somebody like Rob Burrow, it was that gift of courage. Tiny guy who I sometimes joke never grew an inch after his 11th birthday, and was doubted from a young age that he'd be able to deal with such a gladiatorial game, yet he became world class because of his size. Nobody could catch him, he was so elusive and powerful. He inspired so many people with that gift, yet having been diagnosed with MND, lived 4.5 years with a debilitating disease that robbed him of every ounce of that physical expression and his voice, which is always really big, and the ability to speak. But he never lacked any more courage from being able to live it out publicly so that he could impress upon another audience, a community that needed it more. This idea that they need more support, nobody knows what it is because it's all lived behind closed doors for the most part. So it's about developing that gift. And if I understand it right, then, Paul, you're saying that you don't have a hero. What you're doing is you're recognising the gifts in most people and asking maybe, how can I assimilate that into my life? Maybe regurgitate that into some of the audience that I've got so that we can pull it all, cross-pollinate it and go on a mission where we're all coming up with the common good for mankind and society. What I'm blown away with you is that, you know, somebody who can't pour from an empty bucket, you've got to make money. And a lot of business people wouldn't be thinking, right, my business is going to be predicated by the ability to tell stories, and everybody doing that, not just me, by the way. and allowing time for people and not be at the grind making money, but actually thinking about how they inspire each other. So any business people out there who may be accountants, live in a black and white world of ones and zeros, what would you say about the importance of encouraging people to develop them skills, have the courage to tell their stories so they can work together more effectively?
The thing is I haven't got any advice for anybody on that, right? Because then it doesn't come back to what's natural to them, what's authentic to them.
Yeah.
Right, so some people come to me and say, I want a business. I'm going to set up my own business. What are you going to do? Oh, I don't know. I just want my own business. I think, well, I'll give that about 5 minutes. I give it about 5 minutes, right? I think, so I think you've got to have that in you, right? There's some people that just want a business to make money. That's fine. Just do it. That's what you want to do. It's just not my goal. I recognise what my goal and what my mission is. And money spins off on the back of it, by the way, right? Coming back to what you just said before about the Picasso quote, tell me the last sentence, what was again?
The meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose is to give that gift away.
Right. So if I'm speaking to business owners, they've got to do exactly what you've just said there. That's my advice to them, right? I tell you what I think my gift is. It's being able to overcome from a relatively low-level standing start, and it's being able to achieve a certain amount. And now my gift is to be able to narrate that back to other people who might be able to follow in my footsteps.
Like it.
Right? I'm not going to tell anybody else that that's what they should do. They have to find that themselves. Now, if you look the other day, Jacey, we exchanged WhatsApp messages about somebody from a Be The Standard group. Right? So your career's been you're in communicating, and you came in and did a communication session in Be The Standard, and somebody comes back in and says to me, feedbacks to me, I wasn't going to do this, but I got on stage at the Manchester City Arena, Etihad Stadium, and I did this and I feel amazing. And I fed that back to you. That's the same thing you've just said. Yeah, and you was buzzing off that.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Right? It made your day, because what was you really doing? You found your purpose, you found your gift, and you've been able to transfer that back. Jacey's found a gift, you've found yours. Right? So if you haven't found yours, might not be the time to find it, but you've got to work on it. You've got to have your eyes open and look for it. You know, the point is don't let somebody take it away from you. This comes all the way back to the thing that I've got a chip on my shoulder about. Loads of people have got loads of gifts. And they never find it, and then they never bloody give it back to anybody to help anybody else, because they never find it because their eyes aren't open. It's shut by the education system or the people that love them, or even the husband and wife. It's just shut down. Or by the time they're 10 years old, they're beaten down by the system. That's the part I like to go, let's be open. Let's take risks. You've got to take risks. Let's see where we get. Must have been risky the first time you went on TV.
Yeah.
Must have been risky the first time you run out at Headingley Stadium. But you have to take them risks. You have to go out of your comfort zone. And if you go out your comfort zone, you might find your gift. You won't find it in your safety zone.
Amen.
Right?
Amen. Yeah.
You go out, you might just find it. And if you're lucky enough to find it, there'll become a point where you see the value in your gift and you want to be around other people you can influence to find theirs.
Can I grab that word value? So you're a man that understands business. That's something I'm learning. And we grow up in a world where things cost a certain amount of money. Can you tell me how you quantify, measure, and maybe articulate the value of something over the cost of something? So, for example, if I went into Leeds Rhinos shop now, I could buy a ball for 12 quid. That might be its unit price. Now, if it's got a Rhinos badge on to a Rhinos fan, it might be worth 15 quid. If it's signed by Rhinos players, it might be worth 100 quid. To a Wigan fan, it might be worth nothing. I'm not paying anything for that. I'm not paying a penny because it's of no value to me. What we live in a world, when you talk about return on investment, people with money like to invest and then get something back, which is more than a tangible, quantifiable amount they invested in the first place. Very difficult to do that in a social context, because you can't always measure the good feeling or the encouragement that you might not see the benefit of for another 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. But you've just explained it yourself, isn't it? The value is what somebody's willing to pay for it, right? That's the value.
Yeah. So I guess where I'm going from is somebody like yourself. I could say to you, Paul, there's a dementia group here, and we need some investment for this dementia group because it needs to be funded, paid for, and you'd get that. There's a lot of people I see now, my age, who've done really well in business. They want to give back to society. The problem is, right, they still want that return on that investment, but not in a monetary context. They want it to be able to show what difference they've made. Because ultimately, you're doing what you're doing with Sedulo to make a difference in society. But if you never saw that difference, how can you continue to motivate people to keep working hard towards that?
I mean, it's a great question. I don't even know if I know the answer to it, Jamie, if I'm honest with you. I don't know if I know the answer to that, because again, I think it's what's a value to me is not a value to you.
Yeah.
So I hate this word because it's used too often, but it all comes down to natural authenticity. Like you say, you put your signature on a ball and it's worth 500 quid at an event. But actually, is it worth 500 quid at an event? If they know that 500 quid, we did the foundational ball last year, and one of the people bid for a Josh Warrington, right? Bid for a Josh Warrington training session. Thousands, right? I'm not going to say how much or who it was. Josh had already said to him an hour earlier, if you fancy a session, come down and let me know. In the bid, because he knows that thousands of pounds is going to go to good. He'd rather part with the money to go and get the one-to-one with Josh Warrington that he could have had for free.
Yeah.
You can't start thinking, how do you determine that value? To him, the value at that minute was, I just want to give back. I want to do good. I want to wake up in the morning and I want to feel good about myself. So even the same thing within half an hour had gone from 0 to about $7,000. Do you know what I mean? And why? Because the value to him at that moment was all about giving back. There was somebody else who bid for something and I knew he wasn't even going to take the prize. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He won the prize and I knew full well he doesn't even work out. This was a boxing with somebody else. And I thought, he's never going to do that. He just wanted to give back. So you can't even quantify how much you must write a cheque for $6 or $7,000 for something you don't even want. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, if you're in business, what you've got to try and do is you've got to value yourself, haven't you? Right? So you've got to, but the value, and what we always try and do is we're always trying to do things differently, better than everybody else. And then you've got to hope people will pay for better. And they don't always, because can't go into the detail really of what we charge, but we've got people who will pay fortunes for what we do. And we've got others where there may be a business owner where every penny matters to him. And all of a sudden, the value might be the same, but it doesn't matter. It's the money that they're parting with. They're only willing to pay 700 quid instead of $7,000 or whatever. Do you know what I mean? And they might even see the values the same. So I think, when it comes to value, it's too hard to dictate what the value is to somebody. They will tell you what the value is and they'll pay it. It's the way it is. But you've got to value yourself, though.
Yeah.
Your business has got to value yourself. A lot of us undervalue ourselves, don't we? How much is it for speaking? Oh, should I do it? Am I too expensive? And sometimes you've got to navigate your way from that. It's a confidence thing what your value is, isn't it?
Yep.
Somebody paid you $5,000 to do a speaking gig. All of a sudden you're confident charging $5,000.
Yeah.
Somebody charges you 500 quid, says he'll give you 500 quid. You're confident charging 500 quid, but it don't mean you're not worth $5,000.
Do you think that changes with age?
100% it changes with age. 100%. It changes with repetition.
Yeah.
If everybody said you're only worth 500 quid to do a talk, you could be 72, but you're worth 500 quid to do a talk. Whereas if somebody flew you out to Nike headquarters and paid first class and paid you $10,000, well, you've got that experience of being that. So it comes with experience in that age, doesn't it?
So from a communications perspective, what are the biggest life lessons you have learned?
From a communications perspective, throw yourself into it. Overcome the physiological barriers that are going to be presented and understand that they're not actually barriers. Understand that readiness for performance has a physiological reaction. Throw yourself into it. Do more of it. I think they are. Everything else is picked up from that. You know, when I look back, it's like, of course you need idiosyncrasies to speak to somebody who's got a spoon with a silver spoon to somebody who was brought up where I was brought up from. But by doing more of that, by overcoming your fears, by actually turning up to do the interview, when, you know, you can be more nervous about interviewing people you know is not going to be a natural. I did it at Concord the other week and I told you I was really nervous. And then it was at Concord at Manchester Airport, so that I'm just about to start off. And I thought I wasn't going to plan this, bad preparation. Prepare, by the way. But I prepared, and then I had a joke coming to my head just before I was going to go on. And I thought, I'm going to tell a joke. Then I thought, no, don't tell a joke. Then I thought, fuck it, I'm going to tell a joke. I'm going to go out of my comfort zone. I told a joke and no one laughed. Right? So that's my starting position.
And the nerves kick in.
I was already nervous. I was just over it now. I've told a joke and no one laughs. And I kind of stuttered the joke as well, which made it even worse. And then a plane took off. This was only 3 weeks ago, right? And they were paying quite a bit of money to the foundation for me to speak, so I already felt under pressure. And it was structured, so it's a different type of speaking. I'm all right speaking off the hip now, but I'm not very good at speaking in structure because I'm not that structured a guy. So I try a joke and it doesn't work, right? I'm on stage, there's about 400 people, we're underneath Concord, and I'm thinking, what was my next thing? Now I've lost my thread, right? So now you have that panic, don't you? So all of a sudden, dry mouth. I'm looking around trying to buy a bit of time. What's my thread? A plane takes off because the Concorde's right next to the runway. So now I can hear it. And I'm thinking, this is a disaster. And I'm thinking, how do you recover?
Yeah.
We've all been there, different scenarios. How do you recover? So I started to take a deep breath. I started to look round. I pressed the thingy on the screen. It brought me back. But all I could think is people are looking at me now and they know that I've just cocked up. They know that I've lost my thread. They know that. Did they really know I've lost my thread?
I don't think people do. I think that's the self-consciousness that kicks in again, isn't it? That we kind of have to think that people are not there to catch us out.
And so then I thought, just be yourself. Take a breath. Try and regain some composure. And it probably took me It felt like it was about 30 seconds, right, to get the composure. And then I started to get the flow. And it was exactly that, what I just described it all the way. So I talked about my journey starting 7 years ago with communicating. I had exactly the same feeling 3 weeks ago when I thought I'd conquered that. But I felt the same again. So what did I do? I carried on. I got through it. And then actually, like we all do, when you get through some pain, whether it's winning a game or whatever it is, whether it's winning a match that you're down from, right, or overcoming injury or whatever it is, you feel stronger, you feel better, you feel like you've accomplished something, right? Because if you don't have those downs, if you don't have the losses, if you don't have the failures, if you don't have the discomfort, you don't have the wins, you don't have the ups, you don't have the adrenaline rushes. And so you have no choice if you want to live, to keep going through them. And even with experience, you're still going to find yourself in that situation of discomfort. And you've just got to get through it. And then you keep going and going and you get uncomfortable again. And then it's a bit like my business and its growth. So I'm uncomfortable most of the time. I could stop now and be comfortable for the rest of my life. But I won't. I'll bite off more than I can chew. I'll open Birmingham. I'll buy another business. I'll bring in this. Costs will go through the roof. And I'll think, back's against the wall again. And I'll feel uncomfortable again. As soon as I get comfortable, I'll do the same thing again. And it's on repeat. Because, as Barry Earn and Graham Souness, the thing I did learn, going back, all the way back to your question before, is it's a game. Life's a game. Yeah. It's not about the money. I don't need the money. I'm not even doing it for the money. Might have at the start. I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it for the game. I'm doing it to win. I'm doing it to have something to do today. I'm doing it for purpose. It's a game. Graham Souness is talking at Be The Standard and he said, why the fuck am I here? And then he said, because it's a game. What else would I be doing? You know, and it is. So a lot of them, when you get later in life, and they're in the 70s, them too, when they're reflective, I'm a 40-odd-year-old reflector today, The ones I like are when they're 70-odd-year-old reflectors. That's why I like
true
Sugar Ray.
reflection.
Yeah, it's just what's the word where it's so they talk with so much freedom because they just don't care.
Yeah,
I semi-care.
No holds
so I'm
barred.
talking, So that's why I think the best communicators are the older ones.
Yeah,
They've just been through more.
Yeah.
Number one. But secondly, they've got so far down in life, they just don't care.
Yeah.
They're going to say whatever they think. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. They become the best communicators. So the sooner we all get to that stage, without the age, the better.
Loaded question this. If you could go back to that opener with the joke, would you change it or would you still go with it?
Well, that is a really, really good question. And I'm going to tell you the honest answer. I wouldn't have done it.
You want to do it again?
I wouldn't have done it, right? I wouldn't have done it because what I did do there was I don't know whether I would have done it. I won't do it the next time. I like things to be perfect. I'm a perfectionist. And I was already out of my comfort zone. So maybe I was probably as far out of my comfort zone as I probably should have got. Yeah. You can bite off more than you can chew. And I probably threw it off and bit off a bit more than I could chew. But so if I started it off again, but I was quite proud of myself for doing it.
Yeah.
Because I thought, at least you had the balls to do it. You cocked up, but you had the balls.
I'm encouraged by that, by the fact that you did it, because I've done routine talks where they've had a bit of a joke and it's been the same joke. You get one audience at a certain time of day, a laugh. Then you'll do exactly the same gig the next day, maybe an hour later after dinner, when everybody's got a carbohydrate hangover. And they don't laugh. And you go, is it me that's wrong or is it the context? And sometimes you don't know, but when you get something in your mind like that and you're going to go, I'm going to throw this off the cuff.
Yeah.
I just love that learning lesson and some of the fear of whether it's going to work or not. I'm encouraged by the fact that you went with it.
Yeah. So I don't know if I was. The actual joke was the guy before me was speaking about AI and the fact that you could have and he was showing all like holograms and stuff up there. So when I go on stage, I'd like feel myself a little bit and go, this is the real me. You know, the hologram called Cheetham's up, guest speaker next year. But it just all went wrong. And
holograms flying planes.
I was quite proud of. If I could rewind, I'd still do the joke.
Yeah.
But if I was doing it again, I'd minus a joke. Because sometimes you've got to get confidence back. So that's the key, innit?
Sure.
It's that balance between, you can't always be out your comfort zone. If you're always out your comfort zone and you're always, taking left and right hooks, metaphorically, then your confidence starts to detract. So everything that we talk about today has got to have balance, right? You don't want to stay in your comfort zone, but you do want to, once you've grown a little bit, you do want to take that, this is the level that I'm operating at now. Do you know what I mean? You won't want to go from a 16-year-old in the under 16s into the reserves and then the next game being the first team. You've got to level up at under 16s. Then you've got to feel I'm comfortable in the reserves now. I'm ready for the first team. So there is that balance. But the thing is most people get the balance the wrong way. Yeah. They don't get the balance that they're not. They get the balance that they just sit in the comfort zone constantly and spend far too much time in it. And I'm trying to encourage my kids to do the opposite. And I think you've got to lead by example. So again, I have to practice what I preach. And that's why I tried the joke. It would be a failure for me to say, hey, come out your comfort zone. You got to do this. Nothing happens. And then do I make the joke or don't I make the joke? And then I don't. So sometimes you got to practice. When you're a leader, there's an extra nuance to it. At that point, you've got to go, actually, even if I don't want to, I've just got to because it's for the overall here. Yeah. This is for the team. And so when you're a leader, there's a nuance to that.
Funny should come last sometimes, I suppose. It's difficult. On a different day, that would have gone down in a completely different way.
Well, if you wouldn't have fumbled it might have gone down well there.
If you go in with a joke, you've almost got to be so confident to pull it off, haven't you? Because I do feel that if an audience picks up on a nervousness about you, they won't laugh. It's a really difficult thing to pull off humour.
I've got to say on communication here, here's the thing. So I started my own podcast. And on the first podcast, the set was me saying what I was going to do. The second podcast and third podcast, I remember the third podcast guy coming in and he was like, I'm really nervous. And I was like, yeah, me as well. And I've not slept for 2 nights and I'm asking the questions, right? Because I didn't like public speaking. But I've got to take one for the team. We've got to grow our marketing. The marketing guys are saying, come on, let's do a podcast. So we did it. But I wouldn't sleep for 2 nights before I was asking the questions. So then what happened is that my missus, I went home and I was doing, I said, I've just done the podcast. She went, thank God that's out the way. We'll get some sleep for the next few nights. So you've got your next one, right? I said, well, worse than that, I've got another one coming up in 2 days. Well, what's that? She said, I'm doing an empowered women Q&A with 4 women business leaders. And I'm the person, and I've never done that before. And there was 150 tickets sold. So it's live audience. So again, difference, level up, scale up, live audience. Now I've got to thread 4 women. So it's not even I don't sleep for 2 nights, day to day. And I get up in the morning and I'm moody now with the kids, right? I'm moody with missus. And she said, you're a fucking joke, you. And I said, what do you mean? She said, you're not doing this at all properly. You're turning up as if you're Paul the accountant, asking 4 women in front of another 150 other women in a live audience as if you're Paul the accountant. Mm. If you don't go in and actually own what you're about to do, if you don't go in and put a poker face and a hat on and think, actually today I'm the host, I've got to make people feel comfortable. You don't tell them if they're nervous, you feel fucking nervous as well. You've got to put their mind at ease, Paul. That's your job. That's what you're doing for that hour and a half, right? And she tore into me a little bit. And I drove from Manchester to Leeds and I thought, she's right, you know. I've got to own it. I've got to not carry that imposter syndrome with me that we all have. Always, regardless of however successful you are, we have environments of imposter syndrome, and I've got to lose it, leave it at the door. I walked into my Liverpool Leeds office, and there was all the camera crew around. It was empty at the time, and I went, here's how it is, right? I'm the host. You need to do this, 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 and this. This is what we're going to do. By the way, I'm going to perform like this today, and if I don't, we're not doing this ever again. And I went and had a couple of walks around Park Square as it filled up. I took a deep breath, walked through the door and thought, you're not Paul the accountant, you're not the founder of Sedulo, you're the host of an Empowering Women event. Act like one. And that was another big major tip that I would give to somebody. You've got to own it. Most of the time we come on, if you're out your comfort zone, and there's an element where it's okay to show vulnerability. It's all right to a degree. If you're the host, be a host. Do you know what I mean? If you're a host, be the host.
Amen.
And that was a changing factor in me doing more of this, actually, what my missus said. So
getting out of your comfort zone and doing more practice, which is, I think, probably the best point to leave today out, because that is what we need to encourage everyone to do, to just do more of it. If you like our Pipe Up podcast, there will be more of these to come. Keep an eye on our socials. And if you would like to find out more about Sedulo, the Sedulo Foundation, and Be the Standard, we'll put information on the page too, so you can follow those links at the end of this. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you soon.